Your home is your most valuable asset, so it's important to know everything you can to protect it and your family. I am your host, Dan O'Malley, along with your home expert and owner operator of Cook DFW Roofing and Restoration, Daniel Cook, and we are going to know your home. On today's episode, we are going to dig into the three most expensive home repair projects that you will encounter as a homeowner. Daniel, why is that so important nowadays?
Well, Dan, it's becoming more and more important every single day. And I just read an article that said this last year, 2025, they just got this data in that more homeowners, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, are staying in their home longer than in the last 25 years ever. So instead of people flipping out of their homes like it was very popular to every 2, 3, 4 years, now the average just got to 7.7 years in DFW. And it's even higher in the nation. It's 8.6. And if you look back in the early 2000s in DFW, it was over just 2 years. Some would stay in their home before they'd sell it and get another one. And then the average in the country was 4.2 years. So people are just starting to stay in their homes longer. It's not as convenient to flip your home and buy another one. And you got interest rates going against you and the cost of the homes are going up. And so it's just not as easy to get homes, that you just want to, dump and get another one now.
Yeah. And because of that, that means as you stay in your home longer, you're going to be required to do more maintenance, to do more projects to keep it up, right? So now that we know people are spending more time in their homes, it's likely you're going to have to do some major repair or replacing of things. So, what are the three most expensive home repair projects?
Well, first off the box, and especially in Texas, we love our air conditioning. And unfortunately, that can get costly. And that depends on a lot of variables there. But, an average system could run you anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000 once you replace it. And when they replace these units, the refrigerant that they're using is changing all the time. And so you have to almost replace the entire unit as a whole. Instead of sometimes you could replace just the outside piece, or sometimes you could replace just the inside, and sometimes you have to replace the heater portion. But now it just doesn't make sense. So unfortunately, you get stuck with replacing an entire system.
And number two.
Number two is foundation work. We know that the state of Texas has some hard soil, limestone, different things like that. And we also know that unless we really take care of our foundations by keeping them a consistent moisture content, making sure we have excellent drainage, making sure that we are going out there and we laugh about this, watering our concrete around our home, that we're going to have some foundation problems. And you'll notice those really quickly inside your home when you start opening the doors and shutting the doors, and you have bowing and sometimes flooring and different things like that. And that right there, that can run you a pretty good amount of money. I've seen foundation repairs run from $7,500 up to $20,000, $25,000, depending on the severity that happens on your particular home.
And then number three.
Well, the dreaded roof. We have a lot of weather. We have a lot of weather around here, and your roofs take a beating. And those are an expensive item. They are the most important thing on the exterior of your home, though, because without the roof being in good shape, you're going to risk having a lot of water damage on the inside, and it just magnifies all the different things that could happen bad on the inside and in your attic and all kinds of stuff. Roofs are going up with expense as well. Our average roofs are somewhere between 12 and 20,000 in the DFW market, depending on, of course, the size of your home and any things that your roof requires. But those are your top three.
All right. So now, as homeowners, how can we prepare for an HVAC replacement?
Well, the best thing to do for preparation is maintenance. You need to have your system looked at twice a year. Once in the spring before you go through the summer, and once in the fall before you go through winter. Those critical times to look at your equipment, clean it, maintain it, make sure it's in the optimal running condition will extend the life of those units. I've seen units last 20 years and I've seen units last 4 years. Why? Well, it's because you just can't put something out there and start running it to death without, giving it some time to catch up and doing some maintenance. It's just like our bodies. You can't go 24 hours a day without food and water and shelter. But we just, as people, we just think that AC is built to run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and it doesn't need anything. And
yeah,
it's not the truth.
Yeah, it's not a Ron Popeil invention. You can't just set it and forget it. you need to take care of it a little bit
Right.
because, like anything, if you take care of it, it will take care of you. If you ignore it and just hope, eventually it's going to burn you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you got to think you can get on some really nice programs with your HVAC providers around here. I know personally around here we have a couple of companies that charge you a small monthly fee, and it's like 29.99, and that goes toward your two services that you need twice a year.
Mhm.
When they come in, they briefly go up in your attic, they check your system, make sure there's any dirt on any of the major components, and then they go outside in the springtime and they usually wash off your condenser and make sure there's no debris or dirt collapsing around the fins and everything. And they just do the checks that you need to do. Now, as far as your AC filter, that's your responsibility. You need to have some type of alarm somewhere in your house or something that says, hey, it's time to change my AC filter out. And that, in general rule of thumb, is about every 3 months. Now, there's differences in that too. If you live in a highly dusty area and you've got a lot more dust cycling through your home, then that probably needs to be every 60 days. If you're an individual and you have a smaller home and you don't have a lot of pets, you don't have a lot of traffic in your house, maybe you only need to do it every 4 months. But you all need to figure that out based on your needs.
And you mentioned pets in there. If you're running a rescue group out of your house, you may need to, do that filter every 30 days type of a situation.
Absolutely.
Now, I know a lot of people get a little trying to think of a kind way to put this. They have their guard up when it comes to HVAC because for some reason people have been told that the maintenance program for your HVAC company, whichever one you've preferred, they think that that's some sort of a scam. When in reality, what you're saying right now is that's not a scam. It's just smart. So that way your system is taken care of on a regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, is changing your oil a scam in your car?
Nope.
If you don't change your oil, your engine's going to lock up eventually.
Hmm.
I mean, everything in our house, everything we use needs some type of maintenance. And that's the thing is, can you do it yourself? Absolutely. Do you want to take your time, crawl up in your attic that's 110 degrees, pull apart your covers, check all your contacts, check your drain pan, blow it out if it needs to, add the mildew fighter that, as that water collects in your drip pan, sometimes it will make a gunky mixture that clogs up the drain. Are you going to know where your primary or your secondary drain is? Will you be checking the balance on your drain pan to make sure it's proper? All these things matter. Are you going to go outside and clean the condenser with a hose and brush it off slightly and take the cage apart and turn the disconnect and all those things? So if you have a good HVAC, and I'm not going to lie, there's bad contractors in every business, right? But make sure you do your research. If there's a company out there that's got a great name, they've got a great, being, I want to be there for you in the emergency before you need a system. There's so many companies out there that will just want to walk in and sell you a system, sell you a system. And that's not what you need to be looking for. You need to be looking for whoever. I want to make sure your system lasts 15 or 20 years.
Um, before we get into more detail on foundation repair and roof replacements and repair, staying with the HVAC just for a little bit longer, how many sears do I really need? Because I know that's an HVAC term. To me, that's sort of like, do I need a V6 or a V8 engine kind of a thing? Some people might say, oh, I got a 24 sears. They have no idea what that is. Is there a range of how many of those things you actually need in your home?
It changes all the time, and as the efficiency of the ACs has developed, Sears is just basically the efficiency rating that the system is going to have when it's in your personal home. Now, just because you have a 22 SEER or 20 SEER and the neighbor has a 16 SEER doesn't mean your utility bills are going to be astronomically different. It could be a different system altogether, setup, how your duct workers run, how many square feet your house is compared to your neighbors, how many rooms and windows face the west and the south compared to your neighbors. There are a lot of variables in this whole calculation. And there are just some relatively medium numbers that the installation techs can go through. How your system is, your system on the outside, how hot does it get? Is it in the shade or is it on the south side of the house in July? All of these factors come into play with those. So you really need, and that's a great question for your HVAC tech. So when you do have to come up with the time that your system needs to be replaced, don't get caught up in in the words necessarily make sure you have the understanding of what they mean for your particular operation in a home. And I plan on having one of our trusted HVAC partners on the podcast later on so he can go more in depth of what he looks at and how the systems are prepared.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are worried about what you mentioned earlier, which is someone coming in and just wanting to sell me a new system, or or not only sell me a new system, but they're trying to sell me the Bugatti of HVAC systems
Mhm.
when all I need is a Chevy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's go into a little more detail on foundation repair. This is something that a lot of times homeowners don't hear about very often unless your local meteorologist has recently retired and they're allowed to do endorsement commercials. A lot of times it's for foundation repair. Nolan Ryan got in on foundation repair as well, advertisements. I do know a little bit about it only because a good chunk of my mother's house was breaking apart. And I told her, Ma, that's not right. You need to call a guy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
foundation repair is very frightening and it's very expensive. Why is it such a problem in Texas, Daniel?
Well, our soil out here, as everybody's ever done a garden, or if you try to dig a post into the ground here, is very, very hard. Clay, limestone. You get down about a foot and a half, and you're starting to hit solid rock in a lot of places. Well, that's good and bad. So as we have our wet months, we have a lot of moisture, and then we go through extreme dry periods, and all that moisture gets sucked out of the ground, and it becomes a cracking and everything. Even with sprinklers in your yard, doesn't get enough moisture around the foundation or your slab, basically. So you have to put a lot of emphasis on making sure you're protecting your slab. And some people use soaker hoses. There's a particular way to install those. A lot of people put them in wrong. They run them up all the way next to the foundation, and you can't do that. You're supposed to have them out a little bit away from the foundation, so the soil has about a foot that has some expansion and gets, soaks into a nice area. There's so many other things that are variables on that. It's strictly based on the drainage around your home. Do you have proper drainage? Do you need French drains? I can't tell you how many of the new neighborhoods we go into, and the houses are kind of set up on little areas that are above the sides because they want that runoff, right? They're trying to create that nice runoff. The problem is the sides are just collected water. So it looks like you have two creeks on the side of your home. And it takes like 3 or 4 days for that to dry up. And then it's a mud pit and it won't grow grass. So drainage is so important. Sometimes you have to implement French drains. You have to, modify the diversion of the water. All of these things come into effect on the foundation. So it's very important that you keep an eye on your foundation. It's very important that you do everything you can to keep it at the right moisture level, that you extend that out, because foundation repairs can get scary fast. You're talking about a small foundation repair could be $7,000-8,000. I've seen large foundation repairs $25,000-30,000. So it strictly depends on what your needs are and how severe it is before you actually catch it and do something about it.
So speaking of catching it, what do I need to look out for to see any clues that I may have a foundation problem?
Doors that won't shut all of a sudden, doors that get really tight trying to open them. You'll start seeing vertical cracks. And when I say vertical, angled vertical cracks, meaning around the top of the doors, on the edges of the corners, you'll start seeing cracks that go out, but they don't go like straight up.
Mhm.
They go at a vertical, horizontal kind of range. That's a very, very big foundation telltale. You'll start seeing them above your windows, doors, because that's where your framing is. You have your framing inside your home, and then you've cased a window or door in. It doesn't have the ability of shifting or moving that much, so it causes pressure on that jamb, and that's what causes the sheetrock to pop out, because that door is actually twisting and it's popping the sheetrock out at a vertical. So those are very common things. I've even seen floors buckle, inside people's homes. If they have hardwood floors or if they have planking floors, that'll buckle on you sometimes. Sometimes your windows won't be able to shut because they get so binded up inside that casing. They don't have the ability of opening and sliding up on the dials. So those are a few things. So definitely something you need to keep an eye on.
Real quick, back to the watering of the foundation. So if you see your neighbor out there, hopefully in their black socks up to their knees and sandals, watering directly onto that concrete slab, that's not the proper way to do it, clothing aside.
I mean, if you're going to be due diligent and you can do that pretty consistently, I don't suggest like just spraying it down because it's going to evaporate really quickly. You're just letting that water slide down the slab and then around the edges, basically.
So it
If
is
you
okay to
really,
do that, but
I,
earlier you had said the ideal is to have the soaker hose about a foot away, so maybe do
yeah,
both?
yeah. I mean, it just depends on what kind of time. If you're able to go around your property every evening and really spray down the foundation and spray down that section around your home, that foot or so away, that's okay as long as you're pretty consistent with it. But the problem is that you're going to do that for 100 days in a row in July and August and September.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. I mean, most people probably won't have that much time, or they don't want to be out there when it's 110 degrees. The soaker hoses are probably your best, easiest, convenient way of doing them, as long as they're installed and they have a dedicated water source. I've seen people have timers on those. I've seen people have shut off valves that they can keep them on nonstop and they activate when they need to. And it all depends on your home. Sometimes they need to be running for 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes I've heard as much as 30, 40 minutes because they are a small amount of water that's coming out of these hoses. It's not like it's just soaking the ground within 5 minutes.
Number 3 on our list of the most expensive home repair projects you will face as a homeowner, and that is the roof. One, it is very near and dear to your heart, Daniel Cook from Cook DFW Roofing and Restoration. Let's get into the roof. It is scary when you have roof problems as a homeowner. There might be a little leak you've noticed in one room of the house, or after a storm and you see some shingles around your yard,
Yeah.
and now you have to call in a roofer to tell you what's wrong. How do we prepare for that as a homeowner? What can we do to help our roof situation?
Yeah. Number one, most important thing is an annual checkup. We've talked about that several times. If you want to protect your roof, have it checked out once a year. And that's a very simple, easy thing to do. We take care of all of those for any client that's ours. We go up there, we check all the flashings, we check the nails, make sure they're fully sealed and not having any kind of open fasteners. We check the shingles to make sure they're fully adhered. There's no shingles that are loose or missing. We check the accessories, make sure those are fully adhered to the decking still, no exposed fasteners, everything's working like it should. The sides where the siding is matches up to the roof, make sure there's no gaps or areas that water can fall between those. Um, and then just overall, we just walk around the whole roof and make sure there's anything that we see, even as easy as trees rubbing along the edges of roofs. That's very common, and those wear those shingles out. And then all of a sudden you have huge gaps of shingles missing on your roof because the trees rubbed them off. So those are all things we find. And by us coming out once a year and repairing those little things, you don't have a large thing that's going to hit you all at once when all those shingles are missing and all of a sudden you find out you have a rainstorm and all of a sudden you got water coming in your house. That's the worst time to figure out that you need a roof. And then also, by doing some of those preventive maintenance items, just like with everything else, sometimes your roof can be extended because it's not getting other damage that could have been prevented. And so, yes, we have a lot of storms, and yes, we have a lot of hail, and yes, we have a lot of wind and stuff like that. But once a roof is actually properly installed, the materials that we use, it can withstand a lot of those things. So it just needs to get a little bit of help annually, and you'd be impressed that how much longer your roof can last you potentially.
What is the average lifespan of a roof?
DFW market is one of the worst in the world, 7.5 years. So if you're
But
going to stay in your house 8 to 9 years now, you're almost guaranteed you're going to be replacing a roof sometime in your home.
and I don't care what the manufacturers of the roofing materials say. They can say this is a 20-year roof. This is a 30-year roof. Well, that's under perfect conditions. And
Yes,
as
it
we
is.
know, North Texas is far from perfect conditions. So that's why it's important for homeowners to understand, just because a roof may have been replaced last year and you just bought the house 3 months ago, that doesn't mean that that roof is perfect. It might
Yeah.
have issues already, not the least of which are from, storm related conditions, but you don't necessarily know if it was installed properly in the first place.
Yeah.
And those are things that a home inspector will check when you go through the home buying process, and they'll check the roof. But it's still a good idea to call someone like Daniel Cook to come check it, because he does roofs every single day. A home inspector will kind of give you just like a quick glance at a certain things, whereas all the guts of it. Um, so keeping that in mind, that statistic, like you just said, in DFW, the average roof lifespan is 7.5 years. People are now staying in their homes for over 8 years, which means odds are you're going to have to get a new roof on that house once every 10 years. Let's just use that for a simple
Mhm.
figure. Um, how much do roofs cost?
Well, again, it's based on the home that you have. We have some roofs that are 12, 13,000, and unfortunately in some larger homes and different things like that, those roofs can get up 20 and $25,000, if not more. So we have pockets that have very large roofs and a lot of cut ups and a lot of, pitch, and that all incurs into the cost. And something you said earlier, and this is why one of the things they changed, and you probably don't even know this, but when you shop for shingles no more, they do not label them as age anymore. They don't put a 20-year or 30-year shingle out there anymore. The roofing business got in trouble because of the exact reason what you said, was because people buy a 20-year shingle and they'd only last 7 years, they get mad. And so the shingle manufacturers started getting upset with themselves because they couldn't market that anymore, because it wasn't happening. It could not defeat weather. You could not hold up 20 years in a market like ours. So 20, 30, 50-year shingles, those numbers are all been removed from all packaging. So now shingles are based on classifications, class 2, class 3, class 4, other materials that are made with different things like that. And then the other thing you mentioned that's a lot of people take wrong is that a home inspector, like you said, will inspect the property for any kind of known faults or visual things, but necessarily, especially if you have a high pitch roof, a 2-story home with a high pitch roof, those inspectors aren't going to be getting on top of those roofs. As a lot of times they use drones and they miss some things, and they put in their reports every time, recommend having a certified or roofing expert come and inspect the roof. We're only doing this to the best of our abilities.
Yeah.
So even if you buy a home, you need to be prepared that you probably need to have a roofer come out and really check the roof properly.
Great information as always on those three most expensive projects you will experience as a homeowner, especially as you mentioned, Daniel, we're staying in our homes longer, which means we're going to have to tackle some of these things. Fingers crossed that you never have to tackle more than one at a time.
No, you don't.
But if you do, there are excellent experts out there who can help you, like Daniel Cook. Now that we've covered those three things, now we want to touch on a few things that we'll be covering on future episodes of Know Your Home. We will be covering these topics and more, such as, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, windows. That's a very popular topic. A lot of people are put off when they understand how much windows actually cost. Windows are scary because there's so many different kinds. There's so many different ways you can produce them. Single pane, double pane, triple pane, vinyl, interior vinyl, double. I mean, windows. One of my project managers received a quote, and it was almost $45,000 to replace the windows in his home. Now that's a high quote. That's not normal. I think he had like 36 windows at his house. It's almost like a house made of glass.
Wow.
But anyway, so windows are very key. We're going to have some window experts on the show talking about windows and how to prepare yourself for those costs. We're talking about some wood, siding, trim outside your home. Those are volatile situations with our heat and our moisture and our
Squirrels.
warpness that occurs. So paint, how to protect your wood, how to keep it, up and keeping your paint fresh, the styles and different levels of paint that you can buy. There's a big difference between the home builder paint and what you need to apply after you paint your home the first time. So those things, we'll have some representatives from paint companies talking about that. Fences, our fences are notoriously don't last very long. We have a lot of wind out here, like we talked about. We have a lot of soil and problems with the post getting bent and falling apart and all those kind of things. So how to prevent those and how to make your fence better. So we'll have some experts on fence and some materials there. Staining, that's a key item that you need to have done to your outside wood. Staining will increase those life factors of that wood and allow it to stay a little bit more moist, not dry out as much, and give it kind of a protective barrier. We'll also talk about garage doors. We'll have garage door expert come in. There's so many different things about a garage door that most people don't understand. Maintenance on your garage door is necessary once a year. Have them come out, lube the track, check all the rollers, make sure the chain is nice, and And those things will extend the life of your opener as well as the door. So those are important things to do. There's nothing worse than getting home and your garage door breaking and you figure out how to get in because you don't have a front door key. Nothing worse. I've done it myself. Gutters. What kind of gutters do you need? How many do you need? How many downspouts? There is some science to that. And so we'll have an expert on gutters, and we'll have an irrigation drainage expert come on and how to look at your house like we talked about earlier. If you own a pool or a spa, that is a whole nother world of maintenance that you're going to need to know. And there's a lot of things you can do wrong that will cost you several thousands of dollars about your pool. So we're definitely going to talk about that. Remodels and refresh. That's a big topic. A lot of people stay in their homes longer now that we just talked about, and they get tired of that master bathroom or that bedroom, or maybe they want to redo that kitchen. And so we'll have an episode talking about anticipated cost, what means something that will be long lasting, staying away from fads, certain hot colors, some of those things. So that's a good subject matter that we get asked every day, and we'll talk about that on some of our episodes.
Yeah, someone putting in a specific tile that they saw on television, and then 2 years later they realize, I hate this now. Yep. These are all things that you can do when you're in your home longer. You can fall back in love with your house. Just change a few things. I mean, it's not necessarily easy. Some of it is, some of it's hard, and that's why Daniel, has his company. He can help with things like that, as others do as well. If you want to change a tile, they can do that. You want to change the entire room, do that. Change the layout of the house, they can do that. All sorts of great things that we will be discussing on future episodes. However, because you need to know this stuff, we'll also cover some of the boring things, such as homeowners insurance.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs it, unfortunately, and there are a lot of different policies out there. I tell everybody all the time, please, 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 don't take an insurance policy on premium cost. You need to educate yourself what the coverage is. Make sure you get 2 or 3 different quotes. Compare them equally. Make sure you know exactly what the premiums are paying for. So many things that can go wrong in insurance. And so please, we'll have some different insurance folks on, couple of casts, and we'll talk about what they offer and what they are, their company's mission is and different things like that. So yeah, super important. And then of course our taxes are our next biggest expense in our home. So there's things that you need to look at. You need to be responsible with your tax bill. You need to make sure your home is homesteaded if it's your primary residence. I've seen some homeowners unfortunately not know that they have to do that after they buy a home, and they let their taxes go up way too fast because homesteading was not ever enacted. Also, you can actually protest your taxes every year too. If you think your home is overinflated for taxes, you can actually protest that, and you have to file a special form with the county in which you're in, and you have to sometimes appear at a meeting and a hearing, it's called, and you can convince them to, hey, let's lower my tax bill because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Mm-hmm. That's a super important thing to do too. So we'll talk about that. A lot of people don't know what property mortgage insurance is either, PMI. They see it on their house payment a month, but they don't know what it is and what can be done for it. And so very important topic. A lot of people don't put 20% down on their homes. And so they get stuck with that PMI bill for the rest of their tenure, unless they refinance or something. So something to think about. And then, a couple of things as far as protecting homeowners, contractors. Make sure your contractor is in the market for the right reasons and they're running their business correctly. It costs a lot of money to run your business properly. Your general liability insurance is there to protect the property and individuals, and workers' comp there is to protect the workers that are working on your house. If your contractor doesn't have both, the homeowner is the one that's going to take the blunt of that responsibility. And that's scary when you're thinking about if somebody falls off your roof and that contractor doesn't have workers' comp and they need $100,000 in medical bills, your personal insurance on your home is going to have to cover that. It's going to fall down to the homeowner. So a lot of people don't understand that. Very scary. Got to be cautious about who's working on your home. And then the last one we talked about briefly, home inspector. So we're going to have a home inspector on the podcast, and he's going to go over what he finds. And a thing that shocks a lot of people is even when they buy a brand new, shiny home, he always suggests having it inspected, even at time of purchase and also at that 10 to 11 month mark before a lot of your warranties expire. You'd be amazed at what some of the things he's shown me that he has found on those 10 and 11 month inspections that the homeowner had no idea about. And by him getting that inspection done, they probably saved themselves thousands of dollars of repairs later down the road. So A lot of topics that we're going to be covering. We got a lot of information. I look forward to getting on it. We got several months of content, and it's going to go by pretty fast. But I hope everybody enjoys them and gets a lot of benefit from these podcasts.
Looking forward to it, absolutely. And look, let's be honest. It's not your fault that you don't know about these things. It's not my fault either that I don't know about these things. That's why we're doing this show. If you have questions for us about your home, you can email Daniel@cookdfw.com. That's Daniel@cookdfw.com. And you get this dude right here. And we will answer it on an upcoming episode. Also, if you found any of this valuable, we invite you to like and subscribe so you can know your home. And if you are in the North Texas area and would like to schedule a free roof inspection and free property review courtesy of Cook DFW Roofing and Restoration, call 833-COOK-DFW. That's 833-COOK-DFW, or go to cookdfw.com. We'll see you next time on Know Your Home.